Hey everyone. I think every system admin out there has some sort of story around patching Windows at scale, right? And one core component of that story is often Windows Server Update Services, or WSUS. Now, whether you love it or hate it, the fact is that administrators everywhere have used it to patch hundreds and thousands of servers and endpoints, over the last 15, 20 years. Now, you may be surprised to hear that Microsoft has made the decision to deprecate WSUS. Now, on today's episode of SysAdmin Weekly, I've got Eric Siren on, and we are going to be talking about what this means for patching inside of the Microsoft ecosystem. So we're going to talk about what the deprecation means, what options you have moving forward, and how you can leverage some new services in Azure, including Hot Patch, in order to continue to keep your machines up to date. So that and lots more in today's episode of SysAdmin Weekly. It's a new week. That means it's time for SysAdmin Weekly. This is the show by sysadmins for sysadmins, providing you all that timely information that you need while you're working thanklessly in the trenches, trying to keep our digital world spinning. I'm your host, Andy Serwich, and with me as my co-host, I've got Eric Siren. How's it going, Eric?
I'm all right. How are you doing?
Doing good. Hey, it's been a couple of weeks since I've had you here on the show. The last 2 weeks, it's been our good friend Paul Schnackenberg. So good to see your smiling face again, my friend.
You as well, bud.
Yeah. So we've got an interesting one today. Today's episode, we're going to focus on the untimely demise of Windows Software Update Services, WSUS, and we're going to talk about hot patching via Azure Arc and Azure Update Manager, and overall just kind of the future of the Windows patching ecosystem, I guess I would say. So, but before we get to that, we've got a couple of our usual weekly items to talk about. The first thing I want to jump into is, what eye-catching news items have happened this week. Eric, you got any on your list you want to talk about?
I know there were some. I think the one that is most recent, so I'll just talk about that one. Microsoft is now recommending disabling the secure timekeeping, or the secure timekeeping seed, STS is the acronym. Hang on, let me go get that again. Maybe make sure.
I know I'm putting you on the spot here.
No, that's fine. I was actually looking at it a couple minutes ago, and I've already forgotten what that is. I've not had problems with this, so it kind of came to me as a shock, like what's happening here, and I had to kind of go back and what's going on. But anyway, so if you've had problems with your time keeping in Windows Server, apparently it's under systems that are both time sensitive and under heavy load, which I guess somehow I've managed to avoid that. I'm not sure how, but anyway, if that's a problem for you, then they're saying, yeah, go ahead and disable secure timekeeping service, or the seeds, and they recommend doing that by default now.
Interesting.
So that's going to be interesting to see how that folds out. I just read about that on Friday, and okay. But the article Microsoft's got on it has been out here since late last month, so it's been a couple weeks since they changed it. So.
Interesting.
All right, well, if you're having a problem with that, now you've got something to look at.
Well, I'll be sure to put the link to that in the show notes. That way folks can check it out if they want to. On my end, I think and maybe it's just because it's fresh in my brain. I think I said this during last week's episode. It's like, because I work in the security industry, these security news items are always the ones that come across my desk first. And this isn't necessarily a news item, I guess I would say, but there have been some rumblings across social media of a possible cyber incident at Steam, at Valve.
Oh, that's not good.
Yeah, and so again, nothing confirmed yet. There's somebody had posted to a dark web forum that, hey, I've got, I don't even remember what it was, X number of records available for sale for $5,000, I think was the number, right? And a lot of people in the cybersecurity subreddit were making really good points that, like, okay, what this person has provided doesn't prove breach. It's, it could have just been like a public profile scrape or something like that. So still unfolding, but because I am an avid gamer, I see possible cybersecurity incident at Valve and Steam. I kind of raise my eyebrows, right? So I'll be keeping an eye on that one.
What
So
are they going to get out of a Steam subscriber? You have a password and then your list of what's there that's risky. Oh, your
yeah,
Steam wallet. I guess people have saved credit card information there probably.
yeah, probably credit card details, Steam wallet. Yeah, I don't know what else. Uh, I again, putting my threat actor hat on, I guess I could see a situation where, okay, I compromise somebody's Steam account and it has, I don't know, 100 games in it or whatever. Maybe I turn around and sell that account now on the dark web, right? I don't know if there's a market for, Steam accounts or not, but seems like there's a market for everything on the dark web, right? Anyway.
Somebody will pay for it.
So, all right. The next weekly item on our list is what nerdy techie stuff have we been working on? I guess I'll start with this one. And I procured a pair of new nifty gadgets here. I've got, I don't know if you see this in the camera. It's for those folks that are listening, I'm holding up a YubiKey. It's a security key. I finally broke down and said, you know what? I don't want to worry about SIM swapping attacks anymore on my accounts. So I went out and got a couple of YubiKeys, a couple of security keys, and started, setting up all my accounts using it. And I got to say, the process was pretty darn painless. So, and my personal Microsoft account for the first time ever is now passwordless, which is really cool. Microsoft's the first big vendor where they're actually making a very public effort to eliminate passwords on personal accounts. So it's been pretty seamless. I've been pretty happy with it so far. So what about you, Eric? What you been working on lately?
Well, sort of interaction with some other things. A long time ago, I started having Nagios scan my Hyper-V hosts
Hmm.
and pull performance data off of them. And I have just started getting into how to publish that in Grafana so that I can actually see it. I mean, I've been tracking it for years and years and years, and they have there was a PHP-based module, I forget, but whoever it was stopped developing it years ago, and then PHP 7 broke it.
Hmm.
And I was just kind of like, I'll get around to that someday. But had a couple projects come up with interest in it, so getting back into Nagios and learning Grafana. And I know, and I'd actually published that on the Project Run Space a little bit. Something I was working on to do some migration. Now I don't even remember what the project was, but it's out there in our GitHub. So
Nice.
if somebody's, yeah, now that I'm on the spot again, I can't remember what I did 3 days ago because that's how it goes. But
Man, there's days I can't remember what I had for breakfast this morning, so I'm right there with you. So,
and this
but
particular thing is such a big project, and so I'll do a little thing like, you know what, maybe somebody else on the planet will want that, so I'll just toss it out on GitHub, and okay, it's gone, and then I move on to the next thing and promptly forget all about.
and this is a little bit of a sidebar. I'm kind of glad you brought that up because, like, I talk with so many sysadmins and tech professionals that they create something and they're like, nobody's ever going to need this. This is just, for me. Well, somebody somewhere could probably use it, right? And I think that also applies to blog posts, YouTube videos, newsletters, anything, and sharing your knowledge in any way, shape, or form. There's value in that, right? Because there are new people entering the industry all the time and are different levels than us, right? And I think the other important thing is even if you're I don't know what I'll use for an example here. How to install Hyper-V. You got to Google, there's a billion articles on how to install Hyper-V, right?
Mhm.
Well, no, maybe this particular person over here, they would learn best if they saw it from your point of view, right? Everybody tells the story just a little bit differently. So, anyway, sidebar there. I'm done. I'll get off my soapbox now. So, anyway, How about we talk about Windows Software Update Services, WSUS, a protocol that has been around for, I don't even know how long. It's been around forever, Eric. Was it 2003? 2000?
Gotta be. I have very clear memories of using it on 2003,
Yeah, same
but
here.
that was like version 3.
It wasn't out in the NT server days, was it? That's before my server administration time.
No, your online updates didn't really start until the Windows 98 era.
That's what I thought, yeah.
I think maybe 95 OSR2 had it for a hot minute, so that would have put it kind of at the tail end of the Windows NT.
So maybe 2K server.
2K might have had it. Well, it
Yeah,
would have been a download for 2K. It wasn't built in,
right.
or 2003. It wasn't built in there either. So
The point
anyway,
being,
it's old.
it's an old protocol. But I think the fact that it has been around as long as it has been is a testament to, I don't want to say reliable with WSUS, because there have been days where I just wanted to throw WSUS through a wall. Usually it was because of user error on my part. I was doing something stupid, and the funny thing is computers do exactly what you tell them to do, which is often the problem, right? But overall, all my experiences with WSUS have been pretty positive over the years. And I guess what we should do is kind of give folks a definition of what does WSUS do. It's kind of in the name, right? Because there might be some folks that, have never used it. They've only been administrators in the cloud era, right? So Windows Software Update Services is I think it's a role in Windows Server, right? If I remember correctly, it's not a feature, it's a role. So it's an installable role on Windows Server that essentially allows you to cache Windows Update files locally on your network, approve them, and then distribute them to all of your endpoints, your servers, your workstations, etc., right? And what was always nice about it is you would set it up and it would look insurmountable at first, right? Because you just have hundreds and thousands of lines of updates, right? But once you got everything current, now every couple of weeks you'd open up the WSUS console and you'd go through the process of, yep, I want this update, I want this one. No, it looks like that one's known for breaking some things, so we're gonna keep that one out for now. You got to choose what updates essentially were pushed to your fleet, right? And so I always found it really useful from that perspective. Now, I guess before I go on, Eric, anything you'd like to add to that? Anything I missed? I'm speaking in really broad strokes right now, I know.
From the product, yeah, that is right. I think where we ought to pivot from the description is point being, it was very useful when it first came out when we all had limited bandwidth. And if you're in a
Yeah,
place in the world where you have a metered internet connection, which in the United States, we're all spoiled. I think all of us now have unlimited, or caps are so high that as long as you're not like transferring Blu-ray size movies all the time, you're going to be fine. So, but there are still places on Earth that are metered, or you're rural and you don't have great bandwidth. And so, what WSUS allows you to do is pull all the updates that you might want onto one system in your on premises, and then the Windows Server, Windows Client. I don't remember basically almost every Microsoft product that is in common use can then download from that local site instead of going out to the internet.
yep, yep. So good description there. And I guess the important thing as we move forward with this particular discussion is it's been a couple of months now, but Microsoft has announced that they are effectively deprecating WSUS. So this service has been around. Again, I will concede it is an old protocol, but I think for many enterprises it was still a very used protocol, right? And
Very
so
much. It is not even almost everyone uses this. It, it's kind of up there with DNS and DHCP. It's very
Yep.
common. It's not a small thing.
Yep. Agreed. And so, what they basically mean by deprecate here is like, okay, WSUS is not going away
Hmm.
today, but we
Take
are no
a moment.
longer.
Take a
What's that?
moment. If you hear the word deprecate and think delete, no, it's not what that means. I see it a lot.
Yep.
I was at Epic XGM the other day and saw a very large company use deprecate as delete, and that's not what that means. Deprecate means stop using it. Is the If you dig into the depths of the word, that's what it means. Stop using this.
Yep.
In Microsoft terminology, especially, they mean we're not developing it anymore, and we have an eye toward we're going to remove it someday. They
Yep.
won't delete the ones that they have, but what'll happen is you'll buy a copy of Windows Server one day and it won't be there. It'll be
Yeah.
2027, 2029. I don't know. That is what the term deprecate means. But if you got it installed in a Windows Server 2025 or below, it's not going anywhere, but no guarantees in the next version of Windows Server and so on and so forth. But
Right.
we can point out a couple of other things like SMTP was deprecated for a really long time before they
Oh
removed it.
yeah.
What's the other one? Wins was deprecated.
Oh
That's
man.
hung out there. Like we forgot that it was deprecated. It was deprecated for so long, and so there's really no kind of knowledge of what does that mean. Does that mean it's going to be gone in the next one? Is it going to be gone in 5 iterations down the line? We don't know. What we do know is that they have said that they're not going to add any more development effort into it except to add new products, and they'll do basic due diligence, security updates, and so
Right.
on. So, but then now we're on a timer because Server 2025 will go into extended maintenance in 2029. Is that correct? So
Ah,
at
don't.
that point,
Somewhere in that area.
you, yeah, so from that point onward, they're going to be hesitant to touch it at all.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny you mentioned wins. I was thinking that when I was saying old protocols earlier. I don't even remember what WINS stands for. I know it was Microsoft's
Windows
version
Internet
of
Name Service.
DNS. Yep.
Yep, this is, man, you're going back into like IPX, SPX, and I mean, there was a time when we didn't know what protocol we were going to land on. Nobody really knew, and there were
Yep.
lots of arguments in all different directions, and so yeah,
Yep.
Wins could have beat out DNS. It could have. It didn't.
Didn't.
You know.
Yep. The other thing I want to make sure I mention as part of the deprecation announcement, this kind of indirectly impacts System Center Config Manager as well. I'm not a big System Center fan. I don't think you are either, Eric. I don't want to speak for you, but
On that one, you can pretty much always speak for me. I am not a fan of System Center.
but I haven't used Config Manager in many years, but I do know that it used WSUS for its update component. So that deprecation of WSUS, unless they come up with some new thing, that does impact Config Manager as well too. So just something to keep an eye out for. So that brings us to the question: is like, okay, well, what are we supposed to do moving forward, right? And I'm looking at my outline here, Eric. I apparently I'm excited about Hot Patch because I put that before, Azure Arc and Azure Update Manager, but really it's the other way around. We'll get to Hot Patch. It's cool. I have some problems with it, but it's cool. But what I want to talk about first is Azure Update Manager and Azure Arc. So, at a high level here, we all know that Microsoft is all in on cloud, right? There's there's no mistaking that. They're all in on cloud. And so there have been some update mechanisms in varying forms in Azure over the years, but we seem to now have standardized on Azure Update Manager. And that was, you could always patch stuff in the cloud using that, but now with Azure Arc, we have the ability to basically use that same orchestration for resources that live on premises. And just in case you don't know what Azure Arc is, Azure Arc basically is a method for you to pull in on-premises resources and have them appear in the Azure portal as interactable objects. You can assign them to resource groups. You can assign Azure policy to them. You can manage them as if they were cloud resources. It could be on-prem resources. It could be, I don't know, maybe you have some servers running in AWS. Doesn't matter where they are. You just install the Arc agent to that endpoint, and it starts reporting into the Azure management control plane, basically, right? And so now what that allows you to do is to use Azure Update Manager to actually push updates to those quote unquote cloud enabled resources, right? Which I, it all sounds good on paper. I like the idea of it. Have this may surprise some people. I have come to really like the Azure management experience. There's still a lot of rough edges in my opinion, but overall, I do like using the Azure portal these days. But when it comes to update management via Azure, I think it's a great idea, except for the fact that last I checked, and I checked yesterday, as of yesterday before this recording, so I suspect it hasn't changed, but it was going to be $5 per server per month, basically to do that, right? And if let me pull up my notes here, because I forget exactly what the wording was on that, but basically there is a cost for Arc. Anyway, I don't know what thoughts you have, Eric, while I'm looking at this.
Besides the fact that it's absolutely terrible, were you looking for more?
So you don't like Arc. What are your criticisms?
It's not that I don't like Arc. That's not true. It's that. Oh, well, maybe I don't like Arc. What I don't like about Arc is you can look at it for free, but if you want to do anything with it, that's going to cost you.
Yeah.
Well, it already starts off with the same sales pitch as a protection scheme. I just I live close to Chicago, I guess, so everybody here knows what a protection scheme is. It's like, hello, Mr. Business Owner. If you pay me $500, I will make sure that I don't rob your store. Isn't that a deal?
uh,
So I don't like it. I don't like it from that regard. I do like it. I do like its abilities. I don't like that everything has a cost associated with it now.
right.
I can tell you it didn't really dawn on me until I was trying to buy a Surface laptop product that I realized that all Microsoft product pricing is completely arbitrary. I don't think they have a scheme in mind. I don't think they do any of the normal things of, I think they've been in the software business so long they don't actually understand how things kind of work in regular
Right.
business and how you price. So and because people are like, what are you talking about? All right, so when I was buying my Surface Book 2, the only difference between the models are the size of the hard drive and the difference in pricing between each of those models. If you paid someone to take the small low-end Surface Book, open it up, take that drive out, throw it away and eat the cost, put the next drive in of the next size and seal it back up, it would still not be the same cost difference as it was in the two models.
Huh.
Okay, so but they were like on nice even $500 boundaries. So it's $1,000, $1,500, $2,000. Great, except for no. So the more I look at all of these little things, like, oh, this is $5 a month and that's $1.50 a month. It's like they just that. Well, how about this, right? They don't. So
Right.
so there's that. There's no idea of what is the actual value add of me having update on my server, which to me is like, you broke it, you fix it.
Right.
If I break it, I fix it. If it comes out and needs patching, I didn't do that. That should be $0. And I get that Azure Update Manager is kind of an orchestration, blah 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 blah, but it really still feels like it's got that whole thing of a protection scheme to me.
Yeah, and I can see it from their point of view in that, like, okay, they have to pay for the compute and do all that orchestration,
Mhm.
and I just verified it and pulled up the pricing details for Azure Arc here. for and there's varying costs here. I'll link the Azure Arc costing page in the show notes, folks. But for Azure Update Manager, $5 per server per month. So I was right. Of course, I was. See, that comes back to that memory thing. I didn't trust my memory about something I looked up yesterday. Anyway, so
Okay.
$5 per server per month. So if I have a fleet of 100, 100 servers, that's that's a good chunk of change.
That's the entire point. I don't
Yep.
mind them. I understand Microsoft's a for-profit company. I have no problem with that, and I understand they got to pay their engineers and they got to keep the lights on. They got to do all the things. I don't have a problem with that either. But you're talking about from the business owner's perspective, how much money are they going to rake in on updates at
Yeah.
$5 per server? That's no, that's a protection scheme, in my opinion. I'm going to be careful. It's legally, it's not.
No, I know. And when you mention that, the business owner, I've always looked at this from the technical, the sysadmin perspective, right? But now, while you were saying that, I was kind of role playing in my brain for a second. Like, what if I was a sysadmin and I had to walk into my boss's office? I had to say, hey, we're now going to pay $500 per month so we can patch our servers. What's my boss going to say? He's gonna be like, what
What
do you
have you
mean?
done otherwise? I mean, it
Right.
kind of depends on where you're at. Sometimes like, whatever, why are you bothering me with $500? But
Yep. And so, I mean, that's a conversation that people might have to have
they're
now.
not
And
going to have, we need to come back to some of this pricing stuff a little bit later. But for now, it's where I really want to kind of focus on is that the number was clearly chosen arbitrarily. It's Microsoft is not investing that many resources in their patching scheme. We're not getting $5 a month worth of value out of it as the customer. It's not great. It's not
Yep.
great. And a lot of the stuff in Azure is like that. It's like, I don't mind you charging me for this, but
Right.
especially because you got a lot of, and I've seen this just as recently as a week ago that people out there like, things are great. It used to be that I would have to go and beg the finance people, hey, I need this $500,000 capex, and they'd fight with me about it. But now I have $100,000 a month opex, and it's great. And like, have you seen a calculator? Because
Let's-
in December or whenever your fiscal year closes, those money people, they're going to figure it out.
oh, yeah.
If they, and most of them have already caught on, but if they haven't, they will catch on at the fiscal year when they're closing their books going, wait a minute.
Yep.
We,
The
this,
math's not mathing.
right. And it's this kind of stuff that does it is like, oh, well, it's only $5 a month. Yeah. No, it's not.
Yep.
It's
Exactly.
$5 per month per server on top of all the other $5 per month per server things that we're just getting hammered on. And no,
And you know what I've seen in the last probably 6 months? There seems to be, because of this ballooning OpEx cost of the cloud, there seems to be kind of a quiet, growing movement of organizations going back to on-premise.
yes, there's a great repatriation. I've heard it called. A lot of people doing that. A lot of people very angry because they're like, well, it was free to go to the cloud, but now I have to pay egress costs back
Right.
on-prem. So I'm already, and I can't stop paying the OpEx until that's done. So I'm paying the OpEx on that, and I'm paying the egress fee to move back. And like, wow, what have I got myself into here? And then, of course, Microsoft is fighting tooth and nail every time somebody says, well, I don't have to put everything in the cloud.
Yeah.
No, oh yeah, you do. But no, you don't. Well, we're fine with the hybrid thing, but really we're not. It's the
It sounds like we have enough content in this particular discussion for a whole episode, which we probably should do one on. I don't know what the title would be. Something along the lines of hybrid versus cloud versus on-prem. I don't know, something along those lines. But yeah, I'll bring us back to the patching discussion because that's kind of what we're focusing on today. And so talking about Azure Arc kind of took us down that rabbit hole, right? And so Arc does a lot of things other than just managing patching, because like I said earlier, right, you can do things, you can assign Azure policies to on-premise resources, add them to resource groups. There's a lot of cool stuff you can do there, which reminds me, we should get our friend Thomas on the line and do a
Absolutely.
whole episode just about Azure Arc. So I'm going to write that one down. Thomas Maurer, folks, if you don't know who I'm talking about, he works for Microsoft, does a lot of stuff with Azure Arc. Fantastic guy when it comes to, well, he's a fantastic guy in general. He knows the stuff when it comes to Azure Arc, though. Anyway, so coming back to the patching discussion. So I think the one big thing that Microsoft's been pushing when it comes to Azure Update Manager and Azure Arc, this was a huge talking point for them back in November at Microsoft Ignite was hot patch. Hey, we can do hot patching now. And so this is a technology that they built within the confines of Azure, right? Through their, and this is a Microsoft word, their learnings of running one of the large, running, a massive cloud infrastructure. And they've now brought that functionality to on-premises servers via Azure Arc. And you probably explain it better than I can, Eric, but at a high level, Hot Patch basically takes your monthly reboots down to once a quarter, if I remember correctly, right?
Hmm. That's the
So,
target. We'll see.
right, that's the
I
target,
don't
right?
know what goes into it, so I don't want to. I don't want to either. And I'm not trying to be snarky here. I don't know what goes into it. I don't know if they entirely knows everything goes into it. I do kind of get a feeling they're learning too. As
Right.
you, oh, I mean, you just said they were. I mean, they're not. They're not. I don't think they're hiding it either. It's just that is their target to bring it down to quarterly, and they're going to be really hard pressed to hit that metric because they've really sold it. So
Yeah, and so basically, I'm not entirely sure exactly what they're doing behind the scenes to prevent these reboots, whether they're loading some patches up in memory and they live that way until that quarterly reboot. I'm not exactly sure what magic they're doing behind the scenes that is reducing the number of reboots, but they've claimed, you only have to do 4 quarterly reboots a year, which for some organizations, that's huge, right? I mean, if I have I don't know, a massive SQL cluster that I can never take down,
mhm.
well, that's great. Well, if it's a cluster, I can get away with taking them down one at a time.
Yeah, it
That's a
depends
bad
on the
example.
cluster. Yeah, well, it depends on the cluster configuration because I
That's
have more than
true.
a few clustered services that do take several seconds to fail over, and we have to plan for that. We have
That's
to. There are
true.
places where I have to get because it's life safety involved.
Yep.
So 30 seconds of a life safety system being unavailable, we plan for that.
Yeah.
So sometimes they're longer. Some of your outages are 3 and 4 minutes, which again doesn't sound like a lot unless you've got a baby sitting in an incubator. That's a really long time to not know what's
Right.
going on with that baby. So
That's very true. So yeah, um, early days, but I I don't know. To me, if I look at Hot Patch and kind of form my own opinion on it, maybe it's because I don't work in any environments where I, I can't easily come up with a reboot window. I'm sure for those organizations, like you said, life safety involved. 4 reboots a year is a lot easier to plan for than 12, right? So totally get that. But for me, it's cool. But for me personally, like I said, it's not like one of those oh my god, I have to have this type of features, right?
mhm.
So, how about
That
you, Eric?
is, I didn't, yes, 100% based on we have adjusted to a world where reboot is normal.
Right,
And so, like, I bring up the baby in the incubator thing. We do not have any babies in any incubators who are dependent on a Windows service not going down. We don't do that. We know better. It's not how the world works.
right,
So, most of, even in that space, most of that stuff is built around the idea that something is going on to where the last mile thing will work in the absence of the back end being down for a little bit. Not everything. I do have a lot of things that, yeah, we actually do plan around 90 and 2 minute, 90-second, 2 minute outages, that kind of thing. We do that. But I am with you. I think even in a lot of these really high stress kind of things that the world has already adapted to the world as it is.
right.
And that's cool. It sounds nice. There are a lot of people who really like to complain about reboots, but they're not actually hurting them any. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
agreed. And so the one other thing I kind of want to tie off the Azure Arc hot patch, Azure Update Manager discussion with here before we move on to our last point is I do feel like there's some value there in that it now simplifies my patch management across disparate environments, right? So I got my cloud resources. I can now patch. I patch with Azure Update Manager. I have my on-premise resources that I patch with Arc and Azure Update Manager. And I haven't mentioned this yet. Those that watch the show know that I cosplay a Linux admin from time to time. I really was a Linux admin many years ago, but now I just say I cosplay a Linux admin. You see the penguin in my backdrop, right? So anyway, it's one thing that you can do with Azure Arc and Azure Update Manager is you can patch on-premises Linux systems as well, or other cloud Linux systems. So if you're running a supported Linux distribution, Ubuntu, Debian, Fedora, RHEL, OpenSUSE, SLES, SUSE Linux Enterprise, yeah, all those main distributions. Basically, what Azure Arc and Azure Update Manager will do is when they connect to that server to start working on patches, they will actually call the package manager for that given distribution. So if it's Debian, it'll call apt. If it's RHEL, it'll call yum or DNF. I forget what DNF stands for. I don't use Red Hat-based distributions as much as I used to. But anyway, so yeah, that kind of simplifies patching for me for my Linux systems as well. But again, there's a cost associated with it, right? A cost that not every organization is going to want to deal with. So anyway, so given all this information, Eric, we've talked about WSUS. We've talked about how WSUS, while it's here with us for now, it's not getting any more love, and eventually it's going to go away in some way, shape, or form. We've got Arc and Azure Update Manager. But what if I don't want to use those? What are my options? I do know that, your basic Windows update mechanism within each OS is still there, still usable. But if I'm an enterprise with 1,000 servers, that doesn't sound very appealing to me. I could probably finagle a PowerShell script around to kind of take care of that for me, but it's not going to have the same level of functionality that I had with WSUS, right? And I don't even want to think about, getting the full list of available updates and reviewing them without some sort of UI like WSUS. Again, just speaking for myself, but I don't know as if there's a lot of native options left if you don't want to use Arc or Azure Update Manager.
No, the takeaway from this is there will not be any native way for centralized patching without spending money as soon as WSUS is gone, period. You will have to use a paid service through Microsoft. There may be some third parties. I think I've seen a couple. I want to say I saw something the other day and an ad go through that up to a certain number of endpoints will do your patching for free. Cool.
Right.
So the third parties will step up to some point, but we also have to notice there's a reason that third parties have never made serious inroads on this, and it's because WSUS isn't great, but it does the job. And honestly, to me, patching is plumbing. It's let's go back to the DNS, DHCP stuff. Like it's so integral. And I'm the kind of guy that I have lost my mind, figuratively, at companies who charge for any level of patching ever. It's just wrong. As far as I'm concerned, if they're writing the patches, they should never go behind a paywall. If your product just falls out of support and you've stopped writing support for something that you haven't generated revenue on in a decade, I'm okay with that. But if you're selling the product and you're charging people, so like Broadcom just sent out that huge cease and desist if you have persistent. Yeah, if you have the persistent licensing, you can't download patches anymore. You're a bad person. And like, no, they're not. Because again, going way back to what I said at the beginning of the episode, they didn't break the software, man. Broadcom did.
Yep.
So it's on them to patch that. And I'm gonna segue this into both Microsoft and Broadcom together. And I want everybody to really kind of pay attention. We can get hung up on the price all day long, and we can go back and forth.
Yep.
What I need, there's an old adage. There's probably the largest pricing difference that you will see anywhere is when you go from free to a penny. People's attitudes change at that point. I don't know if you remember, there was time where they said, you know what the best anti-spam would be is if we just said, everybody, every time you send an email, costs you a penny.
I remember those days. It was a
Remember
long
that?
time ago, but I remember
Remember
that.
that?
Yep.
And regular people lost their minds. Like
Yeah.
that would, if you're sending an internet email, what would that cost me? That I don't know, that would cost me $1 a month to do that. Right. But regular people are like a dollar to send email? No, because that gap between a zero and a penny is really big.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're starting with that. That's the first thing. It doesn't really matter what you set the price at. People aren't going to like it. And I'm going to say I'm kind of on their side. Then the second thing, and this is the one that I really need to hammer home, is right now, WSUS, the only thing you need, you can patch as many servers as you've got. All you need is line of sight to the Windows Update servers on port 443, lockdown. You can get in and get pretty granular with it and lock that down. As soon as this happens, all your central patching is now going to have a political component to it because you can't get into Azure as just a regular human being. You got to go through your subscription or all these different layers who could be controlled by a different department who's decided they just don't like you. Right. So you like, I need to turn this feature up in Arc. And they're like, no. Why? Well, and they'll come up with stuff. And people are laughing, but like, no, this is going to happen. And there are other people that are going, yeah, okay. So we've just made patching political.
Yeah.
Why would we do that? And the thing that really kind of drives me nuts about the whole, and Microsoft, Broadcom both here, is stuff out there right now running on Windows servers that are going to be unpatched basically, or going to be like debatable. Same condition as a lot of people who now can't get patches for their VMware stuff because they can't afford it, right?
Yeah.
That's my data sitting on those boxes. I don't even know who these companies are. They got my data somehow. My data is now sitting on their boxes, and Microsoft and VMware are now putting up roadblocks to having them get security patches.
Yeah.
This is the thing that everybody's got to say. This affects everyone. And it's a horrible decision. It was a terrible. I get that WSUS is garbage. It's not great, but we just added a layer of complexity it's going to result in systems not being patched. It will do that. And most of the stuff, whenever I go out there and try to talk to people about it, it's like, oh, well, the customers need to do this, customers need to do that. Cool. They're not gonna. Most of them will. Most of them will. And then a couple guys, well, you need to set up these scripts, these things. Again, you're talking to the people who want to do something about it. You're not going to reach the people who are being told right now, if you have to get out the credit card, you're doing it wrong. We will not allow you to spend anything. Period. That happens. I've been in those shops. Like our budget, our annual IT budget is $1,500, and you're at $1,700 already. You get no more money. So there you go. And then the people who again are just going to say, "I don't like you. I'm not going to let your department patch your servers." So unless you come crawl across the carpet underneath, I don't know. There's always something silly going on in a lot of these places, and Azure has all the cloud stuff has really gotten political stuff involved where it shouldn't.
Yeah.
Because you have to go through the subscription. You have to mother may I on every single little thing you want to do.
Right.
And so it's just a horrible, I'm sorry to kind of soapbox there for a little
No,
bit,
no,
but
I was on my soapbox earlier. I mean, it's your turn, my friend. So
I just hope somebody looks at this and goes, this is not you want to, if you want to get kind of paywally about things, not patching. Out of all things to get paywall about, patching should not be it. Your product's defective. They're still issuing recalls on cars that those manufacturers haven't made money on in however long because it's a safety issue.
Yeah.
So it's the same deal with Windows, VMware. These things are foundational to like the planet now. They're not selling nifty gee whiz widgets that you can just throw in the trash when they don't work anymore. We've got, aircraft carriers running on this stuff.
Yeah.
It's a safety thing, and this should not happen. This was a really, really bad plan.
The one thing that really surprised me, and I guess I part of me kind of expected to hear about it maybe a week or two later after the initial deprecation announcement for WSUS. Why would they not just create like a window, like a WSUS module for Windows Admin Center, right? Allow Windows Admin Center to fill that role.
Why not just let WSUS go? They're clearly not burning a lot of money on it anyway, because as you
Yeah.
and everyone else on the planet has already noticed, it's not great. But that's also plumbing. It doesn't really have to be great. It just has to do its job, which it has done reliably for a very long time. It needs love. It needs a lot of things, and a lot of people have hung their own little plugins and things off of it. You can make it better, for relatively low levels of effort. Just let it continue. This really feels like a protection scheme to me. Again, it's what would it actually hurt you to pay 2 developers a year to keep WSUS going? How, is that really going to break Microsoft's bank? Is it that bad?
Probably not. I can't imagine it will. So,
Yeah.
well, hopefully it's one of those protocols that now that it's been deprecated, it, like you said earlier, it just kind of hangs around out there for a while,
Well, I
right?
really hope they reverse their decision on this or stop attaching it to paid things and make it just, I
Well, you and I will keep an eye on this, and if anything changes, anything new, we'll be sure to do a follow-up episode on this particular issue, because I would like to see them reverse course as well, too. So, and I'd be curious to hear all of your opinions as well. I don't think I mentioned it yet so far in this episode, but you can reach us at contact@sysadminweekly.com. I'd love to hear your thoughts on on WSUS going away. I don't know, Eric, anything else we want to cover? I think we've run the full gamut here.
probably tired of hearing me for a little while. I need to go do something else.
No, all good, all good. Well, folks, again, all the resources we mentioned in the episode, I will be sure to put down in the episode description, so be sure to check those out. Other than that, we are available on YouTube, which if you're seeing my smiling face, you're probably watching out on that platform, but we are also available out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Amazon as well. And with that, yeah, we'll be back for another episode next week of SysAdmin Weekly. Thanks for spending some time with us today. Stay safe out there, and we'll catch you again later. Thanks for watching.